I didn't grow up in poverty. I had a roof over my head, food on the table, and a television that played the same sitcoms every night. By most standards, I was fine. But fine is a dangerous word. Fine is where dreams go to die quietly. I used to wake up every morning at 6:30 a.m., drag myself to the same job I'd been doing for 8 years, and tell myself I should be grateful. Grateful for stability. Grateful for the steady paycheck. Grateful for not being homeless, right? But something inside me was restless. It wasn't just about the money. It was watching my manager Todd with his perfect shirts and quiet confidence, who never looked rushed or anxious. He walked like someone who didn't owe anyone anything. While I was calculating how many days I had left until payday, he was planning a weekend trip to Europe. I once overheard him on the phone saying, "Yeah, I just let the dividends hit, didn't even touch the principal." I didn't know what that meant, but I remember feeling small, ignorant, poor. That was the first crack. The moment I realized being poor wasn't always about not having money. Sometimes it was about not knowing how money even works. One night, lying in bed with my phone glowing in my face, an old YouTube clip auto-played. It was an interview with Warren Buffett. He was calm, almost too calm, and he said something that knocked the wind out of me. If you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. I paused the video, read the line again in the caption, then again. It hit me like a confession I didn't know I was ready to hear. Because deep down, I was working to survive. There was no backup plan. If I stopped moving, everything would fall apart. That sentence lingered with me for days. I started noticing things. The vending machine at work made more money than I did in a day. My landlord was on vacation again, while I spent hours calculating grocery lists. Everyone I knew was stuck in the same loop: spend, stress, repeat. No one was building anything. We were all just patching holes in a sinking boat. One Sunday, I went to the library. I don't even know why. Maybe I just needed air that didn't smell like fluorescent lights and printer toner. I wandered the aisles until I found the business section. Books with bold titles and men in suits staring into nothing. I almost turned around until I saw it. A thin paperback with a plain white cover. The Intelligent Investor, Benjamin Graham. Warren Buffett had mentioned that name in the interview. I didn't understand half the book, but I read it anyway. Slowly, like a starving man chewing every word. That night I wrote something in my notebook. I'm not just broke. I'm uneducated about money. That's far more dangerous. Things didn't change overnight. I still had to work the same job, still had rent, bills, overdue credit cards, but something inside me had shifted. Instead of scrolling on my phone during lunch, I read. Instead of Netflix binges, I watched interviews with Charlie Munger. Instead of complaining about my salary, I tracked every cent I spent. And slowly, I began to understand the real trap. It wasn't just the job. It was the mindset that told me it was normal to work endlessly and never get ahead. That financial freedom was only for the rich, the lucky, the ones born into it. But what if that was a lie? What if the real difference between rich and poor wasn't income, but behavior? I started asking uncomfortable questions. Why didn't anyone ever teach me how compound interest works? Why did I believe having debt was just a part of life? Why was I working 40 hours a week but couldn't survive missing one paycheck? No one could answer, so I decided I would. Not for a YouTube channel. Not for some grand plan. But because I couldn't accept being poor not just in my wallet but in my thinking. And that was the moment. The moment I went from being the man who used to wait for payday to becoming the man who questioned everything. It didn't make me rich, not yet, but it made me dangerous, because I had seen the lie. And I wasn't going back. They told me to stay in school, get good grades, go to college, and find a secure job. So I did. I followed the script. I memorized historical dates, solved equations, wrote essays on books I didn't understand, but not once, not a single time, did anyone teach me how to manage money, how to invest, how to think about wealth. They taught me how to make a resume, not how to build a life. After finishing The Intelligent Investor, I started looking at my world differently. I wasn't just living paycheck to paycheck. I was operating on rules I never questioned. Rules designed by people who didn't want me to win. I mean, think about it. Why would a system designed by corporations and governments teach you how to escape it? One evening, I looked at my old student loan papers. There it was, interest compounding against me. The very thing Warren Buffett used to build wealth was the same mechanism keeping me broke, only it was working in reverse. I was the product. I was the cash flow. I realized then we were never meant to win playing their game, and so I stopped playing. I didn't have much money, but I had time. If I couldn't invest dollars yet, I would invest hours. I started waking up 1 hour earlier every day. That hour became sacred. No phone, no distractions, just reading. I dove into books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Your Money or Your Life, and anything with Warren Buffett's name on the cover. I printed Berkshire Hathaway letters and underlined words like intrinsic value and economic moat. It was like I had unlocked a new language. And for the first time, I didn't feel poor, I felt powerful. Because the truth is, most people aren't broke. They're just financially illiterate. And that's not their fault. But it is their responsibility to fix it. I remember my first investment. It was embarrassing. I bought a trendy stock everyone was hyping online, did zero research, panic bought, panic sold, lost $87 in 5 hours. I stared at my screen, frustrated and embarrassed. Then I remembered something Buffett once said. Risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. That was it. I didn't need more money. I needed more understanding. I went back to basics. Started studying businesses like I was training to buy them. I didn't chase headlines or stock tips. I studied business models, margins, cash flow moats. I asked myself, would I buy this business if I had to run it myself? Most of the time, the answer was no. But every now and then, I'd find something that made sense, something I understood. And that's when Buffett's circle of competence started making sense. I'm no genius. I'm smart in spots, and I stay around those spots. I stopped trying to be a genius, started trying to be useful. I watched my friends spend $200 on shoes, but flinch at a $20 book on finance. I stopped judging them, because I used to be them. But I knew something now. The compound interest of knowledge was real, and it pays dividends far greater than the stock market. The more I learned, the more I saw the cracks in the system, and the ways out. No one teaches you this in school. That time is your most valuable asset, that your habits are worth more than your talent, that wealth is a long game, not a lottery ticket, and maybe that's the point. Because if everyone knew this, the system would collapse. They need workers who live in fear. They need consumers who spend without thinking. They need you tired, distracted, and obedient. But once you start learning, truly learning, you become harder to control. That's what reading did for me. That's what understanding money did for me. I stopped being afraid of bills, stopped being ashamed of what I didn't know. Instead, I became obsessed with what I could still learn. I remember walking into work one Monday, same old place, same old people, only this time, something had changed. It's not them. Me. I no longer saw myself as a victim of the system. I was a student of it. And that's when things really started to shift. Once you start understanding money, it's impossible to look at your life the same way. Every dollar you spend becomes a soldier. Every habit, a brick. And one day you realize you're either building a castle or digging your own grave. After months of reading and learning, I finally felt ready to make a move. It's not just theoretical knowledge anymore, action. I didn't have a huge inheritance. No magic mentor, no secret inside tip, just the simple realization. If I could build something, anything that generated money while I wasn't working, I could start escaping the trap. That became my mission. Not to get rich overnight, but to build a castle strong enough to protect me. At first, it wasn't glamorous. I started offering freelance work online. Small gigs, copywriting, editing, spreadsheet cleanups, $1.25 here, $50 there. I wasn't trying to get rich. I was trying to buy back my time 1 hour at a time. I tracked every hour spent and every dollar earned. My spreadsheet looked chaotic. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't just making money. I was building leverage. That was my first brick. I remembered something Buffett said. The most important investment you can make is in yourself. So I kept going. I took free online courses, read business books, practiced writing every night for 30 minutes. I wasn't chasing money. I was building a moat. Because once you have something valuable, knowledge, skill, insight, You can't be replaced. You can be underpaid for a while, ignored, maybe even mocked. But not forever. I learned another lesson. Your income can grow, but your habits must stay lean. As I started making more money from side gigs, I noticed the temptation creeping in, desire to celebrate, to upgrade, to finally live a little. But I resisted, because I had seen too many people climb out of debt, only to fall back in through the front door of lifestyle inflation. If you increase your expenses as fast as your income, I wrote in my journal, you'll never be free. You're just decorating the prison. That's when Buffett's idea of a moat began to take shape in my mind. In business, a moat is what protects your castle from competitors. It could be brand power, low costs, unique technology, customer loyalty. In life, your moat is what protects you from desperation. It's the habits, systems, and knowledge that keep you from falling back into chaos. And I started building mine, emergency fund, my first financial shield. I saved $1,000, then $3,000, eventually enough for 6 months of expenses. It changed everything. I stopped making decisions from fear. Multiple income streams, freelancing, dividend paying, ETFs, peer-to-peer lending. Nothing big at first, but steady, predictable. Money that arrived without asking for it. Skill stacking, writing plus data plus communication. I wasn't the best at any one thing, but I was dangerous in combination. I remember getting a call from my boss, asking if I could work over the weekend. Old me would have said yes immediately. Scared of losing favor, scared of missing a paycheck. But new me paused. I checked my spreadsheet. I'd made $800 that week outside of work. For the first time, I politely declined. That moment felt bigger than any paycheck, because for the first time I had options. And options are freedom. Buffett once said, the key to success is emotional stability. And I felt it. I wasn't getting rich fast, but I was getting calm, grounded. I didn't fear emergencies anymore. I didn't check my bank app 5 times a day. I didn't need to impress anyone because I knew what I was building. Every brick mattered. People around me didn't understand. They still joked about being broke, still lived for weekends, still spent money before they earned it, and I didn't judge them. But I knew I was walking a different path now. The path of builders, of long-term thinkers, of people who understand that wealth isn't a number, it's structure. My castle wasn't made of stone. It was made of boring mornings, of declined brunch invites, of compound interest, of books read instead of parties attended. But brick by brick, I was becoming someone who couldn't be broken by a bad week, a lost job, or a missed paycheck. And that's when I realized wealth isn't about having more. It's about needing less and being unshakable. The truth hit me one night while walking home from the train station. It wasn't the lack of money that kept people poor. It was the habits they refused to change, the beliefs they never questioned. The comfort of doing what was familiar, if it was destructive. I used to think poverty was about external forces. Bad luck, low wages, the economy. And yes, those things play a part. But after everything I had learned, after all the changes I had made in my own life, I realized something harder to accept. Most people stay poor because they choose comfort over growth. They want results, but not responsibility. They want freedom, but not the discipline that builds it. They say they want to escape the 9-to-5, but spend every free hour scrolling, escaping, numbing. And I knew that, because I used to be that person. I used to say things like, I'm just not good with money. I'll start saving when I make more. I deserve this after a long week. Excuses, all of it. Warren Buffett once said, the chains of habit are too light to be felt, until they are too heavy to be broken. And that's exactly what I saw around me. People drowning in chains they couldn't even see. I watched coworkers spend half their paycheck on things they didn't need. I watched them finance cars they couldn't afford, upgrade phones every year, and then complain about being broke. And when I gently offered ideas, books, apps, resources, they laughed. Man, you're doing too much. Come on, you can't take money with you. I don't have time for all that. They didn't want to hear it. Because accepting a new truth meant letting go of the old lies that made them feel safe. I used to think intelligence was the key to wealth, but I've met broke geniuses. And I've met rich people who barely finished high school. So no, it's not about intelligence. It's about emotional control. The ability to delay gratification, to resist impulse, to stay calm when everyone else is panicking, to invest when others are afraid, to say no even when it feels good to say yes. Most people stay poor because they want shortcuts. They want 30-day hacks. They want overnight wins. They want to manifest money without building anything real. But wealth doesn't work like that. Wealth rewards the boring, the consistent, the patient. I started calling it the discipline gap. It wasn't that I was smarter or luckier. I just stopped needing immediate rewards. I learned to love the wait. I fell in love with becoming someone who could handle wealth, not just chase it. And that shift changed everything. I began to track more than just money. I tracked behavior. How often I checked my investments. How many days I could go without spending. How I reacted when I saw others succeeding faster than me. That last one was hard. Jealousy doesn't disappear, but it becomes a teacher. When I saw someone succeed, I didn't say, "Must be nice." I asked, what did they do that I'm not willing to do yet? That's when Buffett's concept of emotional stability came back to me. He once said, "You don't need a high IQ to be a good investor. You need a temperament that neither derives great pleasure from being with the crowd nor against it." I started applying that everywhere. Not just in investing, but in life, and how I spent my time, and how I responded to pressure, and how I stayed on my own path even when no one else was watching. And something incredible happened. The less emotionally reactive I became, the clearer everything got. Opportunities appeared, solutions I'd never seen before emerged, and people started noticing. They asked, what changed? And all I could say was, I stopped needing everything to happen right now, because most people stay poor not because they can't earn more, but because they can't wait. They want the reward before the foundation, the lifestyle before the discipline, it's the applause before the effort. But it doesn't work that way. Not for Buffett, not for anyone. I looked around and saw a world full of people sprinting toward short-term pleasure and running away from long-term wealth. I made a decision. I would go slow, boring, silent, but I would never go back. Because I finally understood, being rich is not about having money. It's about who you become in the process of earning it. These days, I wake up without an alarm. The sun bleeds through the blinds. The world is quiet. And for the first time in my life, there is no rush. I make coffee slowly. I read for an hour, sometimes more. I check my accounts, not because I'm anxious, but because I'm curious. And every now and then, I smile to myself, because I remember the man I used to be. There's a quote by Warren Buffett that I keep above my desk. I tap dance to work. That used to confuse me. I thought it was just a metaphor, something rich people say when they don't want to admit they're still working. But now I understand. It's not about loving a job. It's about choosing your life. It's about waking up every day and realizing you don't owe anyone anything. You built this, and no one can take it from you. I'm not rich by most people's standards. I don't drive a luxury car. I don't live in a mansion. I don't wear designer clothes. But I have time. I have peace. I have choices. And that's real wealth. My calendar is empty by design. I take meetings only if I want to. I work when I choose to. Most of my income now comes while I sleep. I've become what I used to think was a myth. A person who makes money doing something he actually enjoys without selling his soul. But more than that, I've become someone I respect. And that took longer than the money, because the real work wasn't in reading books or saving dollars. It was in unlearning fear, unlearning urgency, unlearning the belief that I had to prove anything to anyone. Sometimes people ask me how I did it. They think I found a trick, a shortcut, a secret system. I tell them the truth. I did the boring stuff, the quiet stuff, the disciplined stuff. I read. I waited. I repeated. I didn't try to beat the market. I tried to understand it. More than anything, I stopped trying to look rich, so I could one day be rich. I still live simply. My biggest indulgence is time. Time to think. Time to learn. Time to walk around the block with no destination. Time to write. And strangely enough, that's what people envy most. Not my bank account, but my peace. I sometimes see old coworkers. Some of them are still there. Some have left for new jobs. New bosses, new cubicles, same stress. They ask me if I got lucky, if I hit it big with some stock or crypto. I just smile, because luck may open the door, but discipline builds the house. One of them once said, "Man, I wish I had what you have." I told him gently, "You could, but you'll have to want it more than comfort. That's the hard part." He nodded. But I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't ready yet. And that's okay.
Gus.
I wasn't ready either once. Warren Buffett also said, "Someone is sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago." I planted mine years ago, with $10, a borrowed library book, and a broken heart. And now I sit in the shade. Not because I'm lucky, but because I waited. They laughed when I started, said I was trying too hard, said it wouldn't last, said I was no fun anymore. Now they watch, still from a distance, still doubtful, still waiting for me to fall. But I won't, because I didn't build this life on sand. I built it brick by brick. With every book, every habit, every hard choice, every quiet morning. And now every step I take feels like a dance. Slow, quiet, powerful rhythm of a man who doesn't need to run anymore. Tap dance to work, and that has made all the difference.